Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 4th, 2016. I guess we're on the second day now of 5777, if you're following the Jewish lunar calendar, as many of you doubtless are. Happy New Year. Shana Tova, as they say. And, I've got a nice idea if anybody wants to back me up on this one for a Shana Tova New Year's special. Look at this. One of the computers is crashing. That's terrific. Okay, well, we'll try and open that up on the side here. Lots to talk about. Bad day to skip yesterday, but I just couldn't get the weekend fill-in show recording done. It was just a busy weekend. Lots to do. A nice 5-mile hike with the scouts, the younger scouts, in early Saturday morning. Got rained on pretty good, so good training. And let's see, what else? We had one of our Taekwondo black belt tests again this weekend, and just a little bit of everything. And then, I don't know. Anyway, it all got away from me. Very busy Saturday and Sunday. Wanted to think about putting together a Monday show, but probably best that we all have a little interaction and talk about it together. Lots happened over the weekend. It's impossible at this point to even try to catch up with the weekend's Trump disasters. I mean, dumpster fire really doesn't even begin to describe it anymore. Let's see, there was just before the weekend news about his $916 million losses, which I think we touched on Friday, written off on his 1995 taxes. It's been real interesting watching people try to spin that one. I believe the latest I saw in terms of the spin on that was the cast of deplorables, mostly, out insisting, well, Hillary Clinton did the same thing, in that she at one point on her 2015 taxes, I think, and probably in other years too, claimed some carryover capital losses, but, I mean, that's about the end of the similarity. As I saw, they had taken a screenshot of her 2015 taxes and pointed to a $650 something, somewhere between $650 and $700,000 in claimed carried over capital losses, which was an interesting isolation for them to choose, of course. Well, one, I mean, $600 and something thousand, even $700,000 compared to $916 million. That's a rather large order of magnitude of difference there, of course. And the explanation, by the way, that was put to me with a tweet from nobody I cared to answer. Explain this. But the explanation is already out there. It was carried over losses from the 2008 crash, where many people who were relatively high net worth probably did post such losses. And it was good for a grand total in 2015 of $3,000 worth of tax deductions for the 2015 tax year. A far cry from 18 to 20 years tax-free. Again, $916 million, much larger than $700,000. It's a lot of hundreds. They both do contain the word hundred. There is that. So got to give them that one. Let's see. Other fun. I don't even know. I don't think I can cram it all in here. And there's probably no point in doing that. We might as well just get directly to Greg's roundup and leave it to that. But what else? I don't know. The PTSD thing yesterday, I was sort of offline during that one. That one feels more like a spin game than almost any of the rest of them. But, of course, words matter in the presidency, and you can't get up there and suggest that people who have PTSD from serving in the military, or anywhere for that matter, are just weak. They're just weaker than we are. It's a super old-fashioned, and it was never really true kind of viewpoint to have. But, I guess you could try and blame it on the fact that he's 70 years old and stuck in his old way of thinking, except, it's not like he's ancient. And of course, as many people pointed out, that's a hell of a thing for 5 draft deferments from heel spurs kind of guy to say about people who served and were damaged because of it. But it looked to me, once I finally peeked in on it, that that was critics sort of paraphrasing his very poor choice of words into something that it wasn't quite. But that's the presidential election game, and you can't step in those kind of traps. I don't know. What else do we have? There's plenty more. I put it all away in pocket, and then I like to put things in pocket and don't open pocket. Let's a little bit more news about the foundation. Of course, now the New York Attorney General has determined that the fundraising certification that they need to raise money from outside sources has just never been filed. Apparently, the word is that by yesterday morning, the Attorney General was ordering the Trump Foundation to stop fundraising. No more fundraising for the foundation, which is going to put a major dent in his lifestyle. And whether there's any further prying into the activities of the foundation and any refunds forced or any charges filed about the way they use the money, we have yet to be seen, or has yet to be seen. There was also an interesting development. Is this the one? And somebody had a real interesting look at how Trump was using, Real Clear Politics has got that, so maybe that might even be on Greg's list, about the way Trump used, and this is actually the one he'll probably get in the least amount of trouble for, the way he used his foundation almost as a PAC in preparing the ground for a presidential run. This one stretches back to 2011 prior to a possible 2012 run. And I guess, long story short there, he met with critics in South Carolina and smoothed things over a little bit with them. And they ran. See, this is where the gray area becomes interesting. It's actually probably it implicates the other actors in this almost as much as Trump, and they have a nice little racket going. The guy is a political activist and would-be kingmaker, I'm sure, down there in South Carolina. So when he criticizes people and then gets a meeting with them later, he humbly suggests, oh, why not a little donation to the Palmetto Family Council, which is, of course, registered, I'm sure, as a 501c3, possibly C4, educational type group. I'm educating people on how to be super conservative and how to prevent other people who aren't super conservative from getting their way on anything. Why not a little donation to my foundation? And guess what? Trump makes it, and gee whiz, they get along fine after that. And but this is an interesting probe by Rebecca Berg into whether or not Trump was using foundation funds to pave the way for his 2016 run for president. That's a little, it's not impossible to prove. Of course, this was being a 2011 transaction. It was probably to prepare the way for a 2012 bid that didn't take place. But a 2012 bid would just as easily be understood as paving the way for a 2016 bid. But like I said, this is where it gets a little bit gray. For the Trump Foundation to make a donation to the Palmetto Family Council isn't terribly unusual, even though the real problem here is that the Palmetto Family Council likely, in an ideal world, doesn't get tax-exempt status. That's where the problem lies. The Palmetto Family Council, in all likelihood, does nothing of serious public benefit. It's an opportunity for the head and founder of the Palmetto Council. I don't know if he's the founder or not. Orrin Smith is his name. And basically that would be his slush fund for running around telling people how to live their lives. And the fact that the Palmetto Family Council has tax-exempt status is probably a bigger problem, or as big, if not bigger, than the idea of misusing a clueless guy like Trump misusing his foundation for political purposes. But plenty of dirt to go around there. I don't know how Orrin Smith gets away with this one, but he will, and he knows it, and so I guess he's playing his hand now. Okay, well, good morning, Greg. How are you today?
Good morning. How is the quality of this call?
The quality of this call is fantastic.
Okay, we get to rate it afterwards, maybe. It's kind of random.
Crossing fingers. Well, I'm sure they
So I saw that story that you were quoting, Rebecca Berg, and the misuse of the foundation. And, of course, the main story going around today is, first of all, the Clinton surge in polling, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as the argument about just how much he's leading by, which gives you an idea of where the argument is.
Okay.
Coupled with the idea that Trump losing $1 billion and then not paying any taxes for a decade and a half or so matters or doesn't matter. Trump people say, of course, it doesn't matter. It proves he's brilliant and a genius, and everybody else saying, if you think Trump's a genius, that tells me everything we need to know about you not being a genius.
Very likely. I did see a good comment that they would dispute, no doubt, but somebody saying, if you're thinking Trump's a genius for not paying taxes and just using the system as it exists, let's have no more complaints about people on welfare, please.
Right. So let me start with two table setting pieces, which I think are both excellent.
I love tables.
One is from the New York Times, although I did quote some of the salient pieces there. If you don't feel like clicking, it is October 4th. You know, it's early in the month. You can do it if you want to.
I will get tricked into it, I'm sure.
Well, it's by Benjamin Applebaum, and the title of the article is, Why Are Politicians So Obsessed with Manufacturing?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, we don't have any steelworkers left.
Not now.
Right? There's, look, Kurt Eichenwalk has this huge picture of how Trump is using Chinese steel instead of American steel, and is that going to make a huge difference in Ohio? Why? Nobody works in the steel industry anymore. Listen to this. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 64,000 steel workers in America last year.
That's not a lot.
There were 820,000 home health aides.
That's more.
A lot of them people of color, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're counting votes, 820,000 is more than 64,000.
True.
So that's more than double the population of Pittsburgh. Next year, there'll be fewer steel workers and still more home health aides as baby boomers fade into old age. Soon, we'll be living in the United States of home health aides. But the candidates keep talking about steel workers. Many home health aides live close to the poverty line. Average annual wages are $22,870 last year. If both parties are willing to meddle with the marketplace in order to help one sector, why don't you do the same for jobs that currently exist?
Yes. I don't know.
You can see a theme here, right?
I'm beginning to.
All right. And then Ron Brownstein has a parallel article from The Atlantic, first one that I have on the list there, talking about the fact that Ohio is not the center of the universe anymore. And that you can, as a Democrat, lose Ohio, and who cares?
Oh.
It's like the third, fourth next state that you really have to care about.
Yes. I would like to win it.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I'd like to win Iowa. But think of it this way.
You won't.
Clinton is stronger in Florida than in Ohio. She's stronger in Virginia than she is in Wisconsin. And she's stronger in Colorado and North Carolina than she is in Iowa.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
So, although some hate the term, with Trump advancing in Rust Belt states dominated by older and blue-collar whites and struggling in Sun Belt states that contain younger college-educated minority voters, Trump's in Arizona trying to shore that up. These starkly polarized patterns of support are reconfiguring the electoral college map by accelerating long-developing trends.
Ah, yes.
So
that's true.
The map is changing.
Yeah, Roy Tahara is...
And it's changing in a way that people just have to reorient themselves. There'll be more later on this, but Morning Joe this morning was trying to interpret the polling stuff that we haven't gotten to yet, trying to spin it as, look at Trump, he's not down by 50, therefore he's doing great, because look at Ohio. But Ron Brownstein points out, and again, think about that manufacturing piece that's missing and why non-college whites are so upset about the way things are. That's in capital letters. That new geographic pattern is rooted in the race's defining demographic trends. In the 6 major national polls released just before last week's first presidential debate, Trump led among white voters without a college education by margins of 20 to 32 percentage points.
That's
but he confronted deficits of 40 to 50 points among non-whites and was facing more resistance than any previous Republican nominee in the history of modern polling among college-educated whites. 5 of the 6 surveys showed him trailing among them by margins of 2 to 11 percentage points, while he managed only to run even in the 6th. The race is on track to produce the widest gap ever between the preferences of college and non-college whites, while Trump may reach record lows among voters of color. So remember John Edwards? Remember his 2 Americas?
I remember the idea, yeah.
Well, even for whites, there's 2 Americans.
Right.
There's college and non-college, and they're completely different worlds.
Yeah, I believe it now.
Right? Ron Brownstein came up with this early, but it's just true. But the net political effect a month before the election is that Iowa and Ohio, because of the percentage of non-college whites in those states, are fertile ground for somebody like Donald Trump, and he can do well there, and he can win there. And that still doesn't get him any closer to winning the election.
No.
And people who are just oriented on Iowa is the first state in the nation and really important, and it's an important swing state, and Ohio, no. Armando's been saying this for a while, but Tim Russ had said it even before then. It's Florida, okay. Florida. And in fact, the East Coast, including the Southeast Coast, is turning out to be a whole lot more important than the Midwest. And so are the Sun Belt states. And that will continue.
Yeah.
That's only going to get more. And so I'm telling you now. And that's how you have to interpret some of the polling that's going on right now in terms of what does it mean?
What does it mean?
Well, for example, there's a new player here in the Who Do You Think Will Win forecast. And it's Huffington Post using their own pollster data. Everybody else uses it, so why not get in the game?
Yeah.
And they give Clinton an 82% chance of winning today with Trump 17.7.
Okay.
Why? Bunch of polls. For example, let's do the big state poll. A lot of this came out yesterday, but last night, F&M, Franklin and Marshall did their Pennsylvania poll, and Clinton up by 9. 47-38.
Okay.
That was a poll from Quinnipiac, I think, that had Pennsylvania closer to 4 than 9, and people like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski were using this as a sign that Trump is doing way better than he should be, given how bad a week he had, and why doesn't he, trail by 50? But in fact, they're not winning Pennsylvania. Well, but look, she's behind by 5 in Ohio. Quinnipiac has her up in some other states, which we'll get to in a minute, but in Ohio, she trails by 5. Well, again, as we just went over, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. When Joe Scarborough was in electoral politics, Ohio was critical.
It was everything.
It's now not. He just doesn't realize it again. It
was everything for John Kerry, but things have changed.
Yeah, well, things have changed, and he hasn't kept up. Well, he's still involved in politics, watching it from the sides, but it's a different
something about Florida.
He did?
Well, he's from Florida, and in 2000 Florida was important, and Quinnipiac has Florida, Clinton plus 5, and that Quinnipiac is not necessarily a Clinton-friendly poll.
I don't know how on top of Florida politics Scarborough ever was, really, but
he should have some idea of where it is, how to spell it,
that much, yes. I don't fault him for his spelling, but people, when they retire from a field, that their knowledge is kind of frozen in place. There's continuing education has to happen for everybody.
Right. Anyway, this is from yesterday, just to complete the picture here. So we have Florida, Quinnipiac, Clinton plus 5. Ohio, Quinnipiac, Trump plus 5. Pennsylvania, Quinnipiac, Clinton plus 4. Add the Clinton plus 9 with the F&M poll I just told you about. North Carolina, Quinnipiac, Clinton plus 3. North Carolina, Bloomberg, Clinton plus 1. Virginia, Clinton plus 7 from Christopher Newport University. Colorado, Monmouth, Clinton plus 11. Keating Research, Clinton plus 11 in Colorado. Wow. I could tell you about the 21 points she leads in Delaware, but that almost doesn't matter. And in the general election, head-to-heads, we're talking CBS News, Clinton plus 6. CNN, Clinton plus 6. NBC News Survey Monkey, Clinton plus 6. Rasmussen reports just came out, Clinton plus 1. You're looking at a pretty steady 5 to 6 point lead in the head-to-heads. The Rasmussen was the four-way. And in the four-way, she's got a pretty steady 4-point lead. And that's why people are arguing about, well, is it 1 or 2 points or is it 3 or 4 points? There's a month left in the election. Yeah. If she's up by 6 in the head-to-heads, she's in an incredibly strong position. And when you go back and look at the individual states, she's winning Colorado, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. They're basically off the table at this point. And so the fight is going to be in places like Arizona, which is why Trump is there. Yeah. And Florida, where she's doing strongly, and North Carolina, where she maintains a lead. And in fact, there's even more data this morning on the early voting in North Carolina, where Democrats continue to maintain their lead. And so it all looks pretty good for Clinton, and that's why the Huffington Post has that, likelihood to win above 80. This morning, Upshot has 79% chance of winning. Let's just go through the others. Even 538 now has 72%, along with Daily Kos has 72%. And the markets say 80. Huffington Post says 83. Sam Wang says 90.
No.
Cook, Rothenberg, and Larry Sabato all say lean Dem. I mean, it's just looking pretty solid. This is not a guarantee that it's going to win, but you can't look at those numbers and turn around and say, gee, I wonder how come Trump is doing so well. He's actually falling apart and falling further behind. And you'd have to be either incredibly stupid or dishonest, or as Armando thinks, stupid and dishonest, to really see it any other way.
Well,
that referring to Morning Joe and Morning Mika, who this morning just had a meltdown. They couldn't believe that this race is so close and started yelling at, of all people, Mike Barnicle, man of the people, because Barnicle pointed out to them it's a big deal that Trump lost $1 billion and then didn't pay any taxes, and the two together means he's getting away with not paying taxes on your money. And Mika and Joe just started yelling at him. This is not a big story. The tax thing isn't a big story. You're wasting your time on this. Get away from that story. It's nothing. Clinton is wasting her time. She's on her high horse on this tax thing. It's nothing. Actually, it means a lot to independent voters.
People appear interested, and the polling tells us about who wants to see what, and taxes is top of the list.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't really understand what I saw. The people were reporting that and showing the clip of what happened on Morning Joe, and I thought
it's just remarkable. It's just not what you expected.
It's not, and it's a rough equivalent to, well, are we going to try and sweep this under the rug with a no controlling legal authority line? Really, I don't think you were having any of that.
Right. Anyway, some data from the CBS poll that was out. Four-way race, Hillary Clinton enjoys strong support from women, now leads Trump 18 points. More now see Hillary Clinton as having the right temperament, 59%, and being prepared to be president, 63%, than at any other time during the campaign. That matters. Poll out this morning, voters are more likely to say Clinton rather than Trump cares about the needs and problems of women. She has a 4-point lead among likely voters in the four-way and a 6-point lead in the head-to-head. Likely voters who watched the first presidential debate are twice as likely to say debate made them think better of Clinton than worse. And for Trump, 10% of voters who watched the debate said it made him think better of him. 36%, 3.5 times, said it made their opinion of him worse. The 84% who say they will vote mostly on presidential candidates is higher than it was during 2008 and 2000. And 7 in 10 voters say they plan to tune into the VP debate, including 47% who are very likely to watch.
Okay.
So that means that a lot of those people will actually stay for the whole debate. It's not unusual to tune into the debate and then tune out. What was remarkable about the first Clinton-Trump debate is that everybody who started to watch actually kept watching. They watched the whole thing. They watched it right to the end where Clinton hit him with that Miss Universe stuff.
All right.
That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
On the CNN side, again there, Clinton takes the lead, and I think that was the one that talked about taxes. If I could trace that one down, probably can't. But
which one?
The CNN poll.
Oh, okay.
Confirming the results of the CNN ORC poll of Debate Watch is released shortly after the debate ended. The new survey finds 6 in 10 voters say Clinton did a better job. 24% thought Trump did. Among those who said they watched, 63% said Clinton was the victor. Stunning 29% of registered voters say neither Trump nor Clinton is a person they admire, about on par with the 30% who see Trump as the more admirable, behind the 40% who name Clinton as more admired. And among younger voters, Clinton has struggled to win over. A full 42% say neither candidate is a person they admire more than named Clinton or Trump. But let me just tell you a point about that before we get too far on the youngest of voters. And that is that younger voters have never liked either party. This is true in every single election. They're also very slow to make up their mind. This is true in every single election.
I'm usually disappointed to find out that they're called parties and it's not fun at all.
No, I mean, where's the booze? So Mark
don't boo.
Arabak, writing in the Los Angeles Times, a quick 4 tweets. I put this up on
tweet shower, not a storm.
On Monday, yeah. It's a sprinkling. I put this up on Monday when I was subbing for Tim Lang Meteor Blades, and I did the Morning Pundit Roundup. A bit of myth-busting for a Sunday morning. In October 2012, President Obama was thought to have a millennial problem. Yeah, he ended up turning out in numbers now cited as proof of his popularity, but as stories like this, an article from 2012 LA Times about how badly he's trailing with millennials, show, millennials weren't as head over heels in love with Obama as folks are now remembering. Polls in 2012 found them saying they were less excited about the election than in the previous 2008 and less inclined to vote in 2012. Does that sound familiar? And if you go back and you look, it turns out every year millennials say, I don't like the two-party system. I don't like the two-party system. And it's true. They don't like it this year either. But it's not so different. And in the end, are they going to vote for Clinton? Yeah, they are. And in the end, are they her strongest demo? Yes, they are. So just want to put a little bit of that in perspective.
All right. Well, you millennials, it's all your fault. And before you, it was another bunch of millennials' faults.
Yeah, whoever's younger is like, it's your problem. Actually, the real problem is my generation. It's the baby boomers. We know that.
Yes.
But, we have the microphone, and we're the ones with the jobs that lead us to media screeching at you. So,
so it's your fault till, in 20 years or so. Well, we'll be gone. That's fine. You can blame it on us.
Right. Anyway, Philip Bump was rounding up all the whole story here about, the Clinton post-debate polling boom, which is with us. And he points out only a third of voters think Trump has the temperament to serve as president versus Clinton. In the end, that's why he's going to lose. Voters see her as a stronger leader and better able to handle the job. One of the remarkable things about the CNN poll is that if you pull up the PDF and you start going through it page by page by page by page, back on page 12, I'm not going to pull it up and do that, but just to mention, when you go through issues, Clinton is tied with Trump or leads him by a lot on every single issue you can pull up. Whether it's the economy, where Trump only leads by 2 or 3 points when he had been leading by 8 or 10. Whether it's strong leaders, same thing. Whether it's foreign policy, where Clinton leads by a big amount. Whether it's immigration, where Clinton leads. There's no terrorism. There's no specific issue out of 10 or so that are looked at. Trump leads in some of them by 2 or 3 points. Clinton leads in others by 15. The issues favor her, all of them, or they're tied. There's no one issue where Trump has a dominant lead. Anyway, so only a third say Trump is better prepared to handle the presidency. All of this, mind you, before the weekend revelations about Trump's taxes. For Clinton, Philip Bump writes, the question's the same one it's been for months. What does she have to do to put the race away? And the answer is the same. It seems as though she can't. She has a lead nationally and in the states that matter. And with 36 days to go, that's a much better position to be in than trailing them both.
Yes, I would.
So she may wind up winning by 6 or 7, and then you go back and you say, you see, I told you back in the summer that she had this lead.
Yeah. And
I sent you a graphic with that kind of sentiment by David Leonhardt, which is early on, I think it's right in the middle there, which looks kind of like a typical Huffington Post pollster graph with the red and blue. It's right underneath Clinton gains in New F&M, Pennsylvania, but it's actually a tweet from David Leonhardt.
Okay.
From the New York Times. He says, you know who never believed the race was tied, not even a week ago? The polling averages.
You should follow those polling averages.
Yeah, well, we do. I'm just pointing out what he's pointing out. So I thought that was pretty useful there.
Crazy.
There's another nice graphic, by the way, which has Donald Trump's face on it way toward the bottom of the list that I sent you.
Right, well, let's see.
Called Trump's Chumps. Okay. And it's two graphs. One by year, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99 through 05. How the stock market did. In other words, going up.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So.
And how Trump hotels and casino resorts did.
Yeah.
Going down.
That's a key thing in this tax write-off business. I guess he spent the weekend saying, well, there was this big crash. It was a tough year. It was
not so much.
It was actually one of the better years.
It was tough for him.
Yeah, and I'm watching this chart.
But everybody else did okay.
All these down times here. I mean, people were 95, not so much, but the next couple of years, he's still trending down. The stock market's going up. This is when people were getting signing bonuses out of college to start, to join a .com startup. And yeah, you can bring your dog to work, and concierge service with dry cleaning and take home dinners to keep. Yeah, I mean, that was boomtown. He's losing.
Right. Anyway, I found this other article as we were talking by one of my Twitter friends who I like to follow, David A. Hopkins, who's a political scientist, Boston College. And he writes, it's not just millennials. Third-party candidates always do better with young voters.
Yes, I would buy that.
Going back to George Wallace. So he's got Nader in 2000, Perot in 96, Perot in 92, Anderson in 1980, Wallace in 68. Young people always favor them over the older folks.
That's a great point. I mean, at first I thought, oh, well, sure, they always love, those kind of spunky, fight against the odds, fresh-faced alternatives. But you know what? It works just as well for George Wallace as for Ralph Nader. That might mean that it's kind of a dumb place to be.
Right. And he's a pretty neutral guy about this. It is clear that candidates outside the two-party system enjoy a particular appeal among younger voters, regardless of the specific generation. Younger voters are consistently less invested in the two-party system, more open to large-scale political change, and less strategic in their political choices. I will just leave that there. They also frequently have yet to experience politics under the rule of both parties, at least as attentive adults. It's not always the way it is when Obama's president, because you should have tried it when Bush was president. I know you're not old enough, but I'm telling you. And in part, for this reason, tend not to perceive large differences between the major parties as reliably as older voters with longer memories and more grievances. Again, I have to echo, Obama is not the same thing as George W. Bush.
No, and he hated that when people said he was.
Hillary Clinton does not inspire the same level of support among today's younger voters as Obama did in 2008 and 2012, and even Obama didn't in 2012, leaving open the possibility of large-scale third-party defection that could possibly endanger her chances. It's likely that the Clinton campaign will place a particular emphasis on young voter outreach between now and November, hoping to convince skeptics among the rising generation she is, if not a thoroughly inspiring choice, still preferable to the alternative. The message may ultimately find some resonance. The third-party vote usually declines in the final tally from its pre-election levels as voters return to the major party nominees. And while millennials don't particularly like Clinton, they really don't like Donald Trump.
Well, that's good. They shouldn't.
Okay, so there's all of that. Got a tax guy. And this is a fellow, I guess, who helped with a book and then got sued. You remember this guy? He actually has seen Trump's 1995 returns and others, but isn't allowed to talk about it. Do you remember that fellow?
The accountant guy?
His name is Timothy L. O'Brien.
Oh.
Here is the link. I'm just sending you now.
Okay.
And it's in Bloomberg. Searching for the truth in Trump's 1995 tax return. Rudy Giuliani has tried to make it easy for anyone who might be perplexed about his friend Donald Trump's income tax maneuvers. All you need to know is that Trump's a genius.
All right. Done.
Right? As I've noted before, I've seen Trump's tax returns in conjunction with an unsuccessful libel suit he filed against me in 2006 for my book Trump Nation.
Oh, okay.
While I can't write specifically about what I saw, I can say returns would give voters useful and tangible insights into Trump's actual track record as a businessman, philanthropist, and taxpayer. But Trump's chosen not to release his returns. So he goes on to say, in looking at it, in the FEC reports, Trump and his team apparently conflated business revenue with the income he draws from the businesses, so Trump's actual income is likely to be a fraction of what's in the FEC forms. I've done these financial statements. Everybody knows what they need to. The tax reforms won't help. So in addition to the $916 million deduction, it contains two other disclosures of interest. The bulk of Trump's 1995 income came from $7.4 million in interest and dividends and $3.4 million in business income. Those would be enviable amounts for most people, but it's not the kind of money you'd expect a leading real estate and casino business to produce.
Yes.
It's now been more than 2 decades since the 1995 return was filed. In that time, Trump has become an international celebrity and made his riches a fixture of his presidential campaign. But how much has his business operation really improved? Well, he could answer that by releasing all his tax returns, which is maybe exactly why he hasn't. Trump isn't that financially sophisticated, he says earlier. In my interviews with him, he's had trouble explaining basic real estate concepts like cash flow. In the present campaign, he's dropped alarming howlers about how he might manage federal finances as president. His eyes tend to glaze over when complex numbers come to play. His own former accountant, Jack Mitnick, told the Times it was always Trump's ex-wife, Ivana, who asked probing questions about the couple's taxes. Trump himself was disengaged and less detail-oriented than his father, Fred. Of course, this guy was his father's accountant.
I see.
He probably used losses on the sale or write-down of assets that Trump purchased with the $900 million in loans to help generate the enormous business loss reported. Whatever minimal financial dexterity and tax savvy is reflected in the moves, it's the accountants, not Trump's.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened is a guy lost a whole bunch of money, but being a legacy millionaire, he was able to get the banks to lend him a whole lot of money, which they would never do to you or me.
Right. If you were wondering how you lose that kind of money and remain rich, it's
exactly.
Not that he had
and I did find it finally in the CNN poll. Trump has not released his tax returns because he's being audited, say 33%, hiding something, say 57%.
Yeah.
So, just the Morning Joe people are completely and totally wrong in every way.
I have less problem believing he's being audited, though, these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure he's being audited. He's never shown proof of that either.
Well, that's true. Although I have more reason to believe he would be being audited, but again, that doesn't matter. It doesn't.
He probably is audited every year because he's a crook and they know it.
Yeah, I would hope that he was. Honestly, if he wasn't being audited in 1995 and 96, something was wrong.
And if he didn't audit him every year after that, there's something wrong with the IRS.
$916 million in business losses in 1995.
Right.
And
of course, the bigger picture is Trump says, okay, you caught me, but listen. I realize that you see me with my hand in the cookie jar, but let me tell you, only I understand cookie jars, and only I can fix this cracked one here.
Yes.
Without a lid. And so the real point here is that if you actually look at his economic proposals, no.
You don't.
He doesn't fix tax loopholes for the rich. And plundering is not a long-term sustainable economic plan.
Right. I mean, I don't know what you do. Where's the reasoning there? I guess you just have to be a super fan to be able to say, yeah, sure, let's cut the taxes of the guy who is losing almost $1 billion but paying nothing as it is. I need a bigger cut. Really? From what? 0 to we pay you.
So Vanity Fair has a piece, I think I already sent you with a nice little pull quote there, on how this election is going for him. He's losing, basically. But I love the last line in the story. At a certain point that will dim, as it always does to people like him, the cameras will turn to some other American novelty. When that attention wanes, he'll be left with his press clipping, his dyed hair, his fake tan, and those tiny, tiny fingers. And that's how the story ends.
How sad.
So Brian Beutler writes, there's only one message for voters to send in this election and makes a really good case that even in cases like California where your vote is safe, you still shouldn't be voting third party. Because the thing to do is send a message to America that people like Donald Trump are completely unacceptable, and I can buy into that. And then finally, before I leave, I do have to mention the bizarre debate that happened for New Hampshire senator yesterday.
Oh, yes.
when Kelly Ayotte claimed, when pressed, do you think Donald Trump would be a good role model for children? She said, yes, sure, of course. He's our presidential candidate, and absolutely. And Maggie Hassan just laughed.
Yeah.
And said, no. And then she had to clarify. That is, Kelly Ayotte had to clarify. I misspoke during the debate. Actually, neither presidential candidate is a good role model for children.
I see.
But think of the big picture. You have a Republican nominee for or a Republican incumbent senator running for re-election, who has to choose between is Trump a role model, yes or no, and doesn't know what to say.
It says both sides. Both sides are not real good role models. I don't know.
Her role model should have been Susan Collins. She could have said, I'm extremely troubled by this. She didn't.
That's true.
She didn't know what to do. She was like deer in headlights, frozen, and this is a comment a month before the election is going to resonate and may well have lost her that election.
Well, dang.
She was trailing by a point or two anyway.
Good.
This does not help. Anyway, that's the big picture rollout for you this morning, so that's what's going on.
All
you know, if you are a fan of watching Donald Trump lose his mind, lose his cool, melting down, which he did at his rally after a week's worth of terrible debating. I think it was Saturday night when the tax story came out. He delayed his Pennsylvania rally by like an hour and a half while he huddled with people figuring out what to do. And that was the rally where he said that Clinton's probably cheating on Bill, and besides, let me imitate what it's like for her to have pneumonia and other bizarre things that just made him look like a Looney Tune.
Yeah.
And so it continues. So enjoy.
All right. Well, okay. We'll continue to watch. I mean, we have to. We're forced to do that.
You know, you also could step back, as the Morning Joe crew wrongly did, and say, none of this matters. Here's where it matters.
Right.
In the latest CBS poll, Democratic enthusiasm is up 7%, now matches Republican enthusiasm.
All right.
And Hillary's popularity is up
too.
It's not going to change the minds of Trump voters. Who cares?
No.
They're 40% of the population. Let them vote. The other 60% is going to outvote him, and that's just fine.
Yes. The other, and if you're wondering who is this 40%, that was the other much talked about article of the weekend, the Washington Post profile of Trump superfan from Pennsylvania, where it won't matter.
Right.
That was all passed around a lot, and I think, they summed it all up in the headline. Was finally someone who thinks like me, was what she was saying about Donald Trump. The article then goes on to note, among many other things, that the way this person thinks got her involuntarily committed to a mental institution at some point. But,
right.
And
perhaps was a little unfair, and perhaps was a little, picking out the wrong person when there's other non-deplorable Trump voters who are doing it for true economic reasons, as opposed to the deplorable basket who claim that but something else.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it is what it is, and there are people like that, and you see them at rallies.
Yeah, and I thought the interesting part of the article was the amount of interest it generated without, I don't know, I guess people, if they step back and think about it, will see that it's true. It was the story of a Trump superfan, but that's the story of the Tea Party. That was the bulk of the Tea Party for the last 6-7 years. That's who they are. This is the way they operate. No one was apparently interested in that. The media couldn't get enough lionizing of the Tea Party as activists, patriots, etc. And guess what? That's why their IRS registered fake political nonprofits got picked on, whereas things like Children's Defense Fund don't, because they're actual charities, and the Tea Party Patriots Fund Express.org was garbage because it's filled with people who were in and out of mental institutions. That's the reality of it.
Right. So that's the story. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. Thank you so much for listening. It's Tuesday, October 4th, and there's not that much time between now and the election. Take care and enjoy the day. Enjoy the rest of the show. David will talk about, we'll see when he starts talking about it.
We'll see if I do.
If you're listening, download podcast, however you do it. We're so grateful that you do. And we'll be back tomorrow, and we will do it again.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Take care.
You do the same. We'll we'll launch into troublesome waters right off of that. Yeah, here's a dangerous message for you. Here I'll both sides myself on this one as well. Where to go with this one? The piece, did I even put it aside? I think so. But I don't know. It's a long piece. So maybe the best thing to say about it is you should read it. That's about it. And it'll take you quite a while, and it would occupy the whole show. But it was a fascinating look at, and it is a little bit unfair, nut picking, as they used to say. You choose somebody who's so completely over the edge. But this was a fascinating backstory on this woman who has all sorts of problems, and for whom, on a certain level, you're meant to have a great deal of sympathy. She's had a hard life, and lots of people have exactly this kind of hard life. It happens all the time. You ought to be sympathetic about it. But she does an awful lot to make herself a less than sympathetic figure. But there are sympathetic parts of her profile. That she was, of course, due to all sorts of economic anxiety issues, as a matter of fact. That's actually was at the basis of a lot of these things. Her husband loses her job. She goes to work. She spends, although some fact-checking on this one would be interesting, too. She has a relatively long career working for a railroad in that area of Pennsylvania, hauling coal mostly. That's what railroads will be doing. But the railroads are in pretty serious decline during all the time that she claimed to have a fairly stable career there. But I don't know. That's sort of besides the point, because what happened during that career is she's a woman in a chiefly male occupation. She's sexually harassed for the entirety of the time she's there. She gets fed up and sues, wins a substantial award from the railroads, and then has the awards overturned on appeal, as I recall from my brief reading of the article. And but then oddly seems to blame the overturning of the award on Democratic politicians, in particular Ed Rendell. And it's all right with me if you blame something on Ed Rendell. I think most of us do. But in her mind, which wasn't entirely stable in its workings, I mean, that's just real. You don't want to stigmatize the mental illness too much, but it's there. And she becomes convinced that Ed Rendell personally intervened and leaned on the appellate court because he was in the pocket of the railroads. And it's the kind of thing, it's not, that by itself isn't the kind of thinking that puts her so far out of step with the mainstream that she lands in a mental institution, but appears to be sort of the beginning of a long slide into conspiratorial politics. And interestingly, so at some point she ends up in a mental institution. I think chiefly they laid the blame on her having posted on Facebook that some kind of ridiculous, crazy meme about the president and his family and how he ought to be, assassinated, and they ought to fumigate and then burn the White House. I think you could skip the fumigation if you're going to burn it to the ground, but, no point in nitpicking about that one. But she's also a big believer in, this was a new one on me. I had heard that wingnuts, and it's now it seems cruel to call them that if they're actually being committed to mental institutions, but those people that the ones that we now call deplorables were passing around all sorts of themes and memes that claimed, I have seen the Obama is gay one, which apparently in those circles is, and also that's a horrible thing. I don't know if I mentioned that, but okay. Well, that's where they are mentally with that. Maybe reason enough to be committed involuntarily to a mental institution, but okay. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. Just, I wish they would keep it to themselves and get out of everybody else's lives with them. But, small government and all demands that they, of course, dictate the way the rest of us live our lives. Anyhow, the new portion of this one for me was, Michelle's a man. That was, okay. She's a man named Michael, masquerading as, I don't know whether they actually gave her official transgender status and all this. They don't believe in that, so they just left it at she's a man. His name is Michael, and I don't know exactly why they did this, but I guess at some point Michael decided he was going to get a free ride to the White House by masquerading as the wife of Barack. But the kids are kidnap victims. I mean, it's completely nuts, which I guess I can say with some authority because at some point somebody said, you actually need to spend some time in a mental institution. She's on anti-anxiety drugs from, as a result of what, I'm not sure, but it certainly seems to be tied to the fact that she was terribly, horribly sexually harassed for years and basically turned to the system that's supposed to make things right. And it did, and then it undid it. And I guess that would cause a hell of a lot of anxiety for almost anyone. Landing on Donald Trump as the answer, I don't know. And that was the thing that struck me about this article. It didn't seem to me that she certainly had concluded that Donald Trump was the answer, but it's as good as this piece was. Who wrote it? Stephanie McCrummen. I mean, it must have been a difficult thing to do, I guess, but and it was a long enough piece as it was. But somewhere I felt like, I guess it was just left to us to note that, yeah, this is a profile of Tea Party activists. These are the same people, literally the same people that have been doing this stuff for years. And for the past 6 years of it, it's been, aren't these patriotic Americans great? They're just getting so involved in grassroots politics and how wonderful. And we're going to cover, there's 3 of them on a street corner in Peoria with honk to impeach Obama signs, and we're going to cover that. It's a Tea Party rally, ladies and gentlemen. And, so there, I guess that brings me back to that the title of the piece is Finally Someone Who Thinks Like Me, and the bare minimum fact of it here is while she's out there, by the way, chanting, lock her up, meaning Hillary, who got locked up? This woman did, because she was mentally unstable and making crazy threats about the president and the president's family. And it was bad enough that she got herself locked up and put involuntarily into a mental institution and on various medications to try to control it now. And it's interesting because later on down the line, she is pretty sure that she is a political prisoner in all this. In her mind, it's because of I opened my mouth about politics and against the ruling party, and look at me, now they're making me a political prisoner, when in fact you're a prisoner of sorts because you're a very dangerously unstable person posting threats about the president, and that's actually a federal offense, and we really have to take note of this. On the other hand, there are many, many other people who post the same thing, sometimes almost literally, and they don't get around to locking those guys up, and, it's unevenly applied, to be sure, but, I don't know how much complaint you're really entitled to. Well, that guy did it too. Why don't you lock him up? Well, we're getting to him. But we got. So that's that. On the other hand, if you want to both sides everything, it is true. Something that strikes me that Ronald Reagan used to say, and not that means anything in particular to me, but they would certainly use it as a defense. So I'll bring it up just because it exists. But there was where I don't even remember where I used to read about it, but in Reagan's 60s era activism, conservative activism, particularly in opposition to Medicare and Medicaid when they were still proposals on the table was, of course, the objection to socialized medicine, which is a complaint that endures to this day. But he used to be very accusatory about the way politicians, and in particular in his mind, of course, left-leaning, liberal, well, to his mind, all leftists are the same, which is rather ridiculous. I mean, the difference between liberal Americans who are described as left-leaning, because that's the way we draw our lines here, and, well, what should be, by rights, the hard right of Soviet Russian communist almost Catholic doctrine. For some reason, they're not described as right-leaning because the reason being, of course, that here in the United States for a long time with all the red baiting that went on, that being a favorite tactic of the right, you couldn't, of course, accuse communists of being right-leaning. They had to be left-leaning. And in the United States, people who were communist activists tended to be left-leaning, but of course in the Soviet Union at the time, if you were a hardcore communist, that made you fairly conservative, and you should be therefore classified on the right. But hey, different systems make for weirdness, I guess. And well, I guess what came to mind for me was Reagan's accusations about socialized medicine and his accusations that under the Soviet system, that psychiatry in particular was often, in his estimation anyway, used as a mechanism of political control. That in hardcore, old-school communist Soviet Union / Russia, it was a common practice to say that dissidents, whether they were, in our minds, right or wrong, about their theories about either the ills of Soviet communism or communism in general or the West versus East dynamic, if you were a dissident in our workers' paradise, that must mean you're insane, because who would be against a workers' paradise, even though it wasn't one? And so you would very often find yourself committed to mental institutions, and I guess it's something that there's a remnant of still lingers in communist North Korea, where everything's pretty batty. But I don't know. It brought to mind the fact that at least it used to be the claim of conservative Americans that they were trying to inoculate themselves against being committed to mental institutions, perhaps the way this woman was. Oh, when they come for me, they're going to say I'm crazy because I, disrupt their system. If she has that kind of lingo, I don't know if she believes in that sort of lingo. Maybe that'd be too lefty hipster for her. But now when they come for me, it's going to be because I exposed the truth about these guys, as opposed to you're just kind of in that place where you need to be involuntarily committed because you're threatening people with death. That it's illegal to threaten. It should be illegal to threaten anyone with death, but this one we're particularly sensitive about. I thought it was interesting. It made me think a little bit, but mostly it made me think about the fact that I don't know. Am I missing it? Are they not saying, by the way, the Trump deplorables are the Tea Party, and the Tea Party was deplorable, and we told you for half a decade or more that they were actually just super patriots, and we probably shouldn't have done that, and maybe that has something to do with the fact that Donald Trump is the nominee, and we all are looking around like, how could this have happened? And Democratic activists are saying, what do you mean, how could this have happened? This has been happening this whole time. And it's not just that the only difference is, although I said probably Saturday night when I saw this story, that, the real difference here is this is the story of the Tea Party, but now they get their red meat from the top of the ticket as opposed to the mid-level, occasional Tea Party kook that gets the nomination for Congress in this area, or lower level even, and we're going to send a Tea Party kook to the state assembly or whatever, and now they're getting that from the top of the ticket, and all of a sudden now everybody is falling all over themselves in the newspapers to write about how, maybe they really are deplorable, and this is really unlike anything we've ever seen, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the same people, the same actors. It's just that they made it impossible for you to simply, categorize as one of those weird phenomena that we just don't understand. But boy, do they wave flags. They call themselves patriots, Tea Party, Patriot Express, etc. So we'll just leave it at that. They're patriots. We're out of time, and both sides. I don't know. To me, that seemed to ring a bell, and good connection to this story. Let's go to the Real Clear Politics story just for a second, and again make this connection. The idea that the Tea Party activists, who are in fact, and it can't be any clearer than this. It's not hyperbole. They're the same people, and it's not metaphorical, nothing. They're identical, collection of identical individuals. They're the same individuals who used to be out there doing this Tea Party stuff. And they must be confused. I mean, maybe they think that she's onto something. Yeah, they're down to they're reclassifying us all as nuts. We were patriots just a few years ago. And I guess you've got a reason, good basis for asking what changed. I'm saying the same stuff I was saying a couple of years ago, and you couldn't stop profiling me as a patriot in the local paper. And I mean, if you have any doubts about that, Katrina Pearson is the answer. Katrina Pearson is exactly that. She got her start as a Tea Party activist, and she's had a well-documented past, basically as a swindler and a grifter, no good Nick who really had no future in any respectable career whatsoever, and was in and out of the legal system, shoplifting. She's getting arrested left and right, and she's got bills to pay. She's bankrupt, and she hits upon essentially the new televangelism. Now I can be a Tea Party patriot and raise all the money from all these other nuts because they think, finally, someone who thinks like me. I don't know who Katrina Pearson is, but whatever. She's got Tea Party patriot. I'm for the Tea Party because they're angry people and my neighbors are angry, and we get together and have a good time being angry. Patriots. Got to be a patriot. Who doesn't want to be a patriot? Look at this shirt I'm wearing. Of course I'm a patriot. So somebody figured out a system of legitimizing the crazy. And I don't know, I mean, I really doubt that it was ever designed with the idea in mind as, wow, the mental health authorities are already at our door, but maybe we can buy ourselves some time by calling ourselves patriots and confusing everybody. I can't arrest these patriots. They're not crazy. They're patriotic. Maybe I'm the crazy one in all this. After all, that flag polo shirt should I don't know. Look at the avatar. It's an eagle. How could they be crazy? Eagles are patriotic. Everyone loves eagles. I don't know. But it was something that worked. And it certainly, I don't know, it has a ring of familiarity to me watching those guys say, we're patriots and we're not crazy. We just love the living crap out of the Constitution. I don't understand it. I say things like, in order to defend the Constitution, we have to round up and murder all the blacks. Okay, sure. That's how much you love the Constitution. What a great you really understand things. No, that's a person who's crazy and probably belongs involuntarily in a mental institution, just like this woman did, if you think she did. And, but you can't because, one, you can't fit them all. And by the way, P.S., that's just, I guess, it ends up being a mirror image of mass incarceration, which is not good, but I will say this. Geez, you managed to avoid it for all these years, even though you're pretty dangerous and crazy. Whereas this other demographic, wink, wink, didn't manage to avoid it for all that time and has paid that price and has been destroyed pretty much top to bottom because, well, the system played out against them. But it hasn't played out against you. That's good. You're lucky. Maybe your time is coming. But, maybe we can avoid it. Anyway, but Katrina Pearson, I'm reminded of because she found her path out of this cycle, the same cycle of destruction that ended up destroying this woman. And I guess we ought to at least, I don't know, maybe it's not a courtesy at this point to say who the woman was who was being profiled. Melanie Austin is her name, from Brownsville, Pennsylvania, is the subject of this profile. She was pretty much caught in the same downward spiral, I guess I would say, as Katrina Pearson, but Katrina Pearson found out early that she could jump out front, call herself a Tea Party patriot, and raise/steal all the money. And no wonder she was eventually attracted to Donald Trump once she found out that the gravy train would continue there, except they would call it the Trump train. Anyway, let's see if we can't pull out the other theme I was thinking of back here in the Rebecca Berg piece in Real Clear Politics. The basic story sets up pretty simply, right? As Donald Trump began making noise about a possible bid for president in 2011, South Carolina conservative activist Orrin Smith caught the celebrity businessman's eye as a particularly vocal and potentially influential critic. Trump would get thumped here. Smith, president of the Palmetto Family Council, a social conservative public policy group, and an important designation. What do they do? I don't know. I may be speaking unfairly about them, but I will bet you anything that the Palmetto Family Council doesn't do a great deal for families, but much more as a social conservative public policy group. Basically, a tax-free way of supporting the activities of Orrin Smith so he can go around and make comments to newspapers or go to protests or hold an event so that newspapers will ask him for comment. And he can say, let's say same-sex marriage is horrible, the bathroom thing is deplorable, and maybe even Michelle Obama's a man. I don't know whether he really got to that level or not, but basically, there are people who make, about the cottage industry of crazy, of saying wacko, socially conservative wacko things to the newspaper and having the newspaper print it because both sides, we got to get a comment from both sides. How do you get every time a comment from Orrin Smith? It's his job to make himself known and available to local reporters to say crazy socially conservative things to people. What is that job? Well, we call it being head of the Palmetto Family Council, which is a social conservative public policy group. Really? What kind of public policy do you produce? Nothing. I mean, position paper-wise, even if they did that, what good would that be to anybody? All the bills in the South Carolina legislature come from ALEC, but whatever. The point is, we say that policy in this state ought to be socially conservative, and I do so by commenting to the newspaper that I don't like gay people and I don't want them to marry. That's not social conservative public policy. That's one a-hole with a loud mouth who pays himself out of the coffers filled by idiots and deplorables to be available to talk to reporters to tell them that he doesn't like gay people. And he's available because otherwise he would be working at Avis Rent-A-Car as a manager somewhere, which is a terrific position to have if you're working for, even if you're working for Enterprise. It's okay. But instead of having a productive job, he's found a way to raise bits and pieces from around the state or around the country that, at least even if it's not his full-time job, free him up to spend a certain amount of time telling newspapers that he hates gay people. That's not a job. That's just an opinion. There's no work involved in that. Well, how do you make money at it then? You fool suckers, idiots like, what's her name? Melanie Austin. If she lived in South Carolina, would probably have sent you money. She may have sent you money anyway. And they're highly questionable, these things. But the IRS, for political, for the optics reasons of it, has to keep its hands off. Otherwise, if you say there's no reason for the Palmetto Family Council to have a tax-exempt status. All it is one guy with a mouth. There's no public policy benefit to all this. Well, we are advocating for a certain public policy. It's just, it's an intolerant, crazy, backward one, but it is one nonetheless. And so the gray area is what protects him. I mean, judges aren't completely wrong to say we really shouldn't be trying to make this decision. We shouldn't be making this call between whether or not this is legitimate public policy ends or not. It would be extraordinarily dangerous if we did. Of course, conservative judges would say the very same about most liberal nonprofit organizations. Although, again, if I cherry pick the two and say the Children's Defense Fund versus the Palmetto Family Council, that's highly unfair, but it's a contest. The Children's Defense Fund wins every time, I would think, going away. But then, that would be something I used to be able to say with fair confidence about Planned Parenthood. And now I can't, because one whole political party has convinced itself, for partisan reasons, to insist that Planned Parenthood is in fact so overtly political that it no longer deserves any kind of public funding for the things that they do that serve a very clear private good, and no longer deserving of any tax-exempt status for its tax-exempt arm, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's certainly possible to turn the tables. So that's why judges want to shy away from this stuff. Anyway, what happens in the story is Orrin Smith criticizes Trump. It's 2011. Trump would get thumped here. He's a celebrity, but an apprentice at politics. But it's terrible. But okay. Who does he tell, by the way? It would be one thing, I guess, if you said, all right, well, he's an effective advocate, despite the fact that all his job is to make himself available to the media and then comment about how he doesn't like whatever it is that's bothering him to the media. He doesn't even work that hard at it. The only people talking to him at this point are the Christian Broadcasting Network. So how'd you like that as a job? Not only is the job mouthing off, but the job ends up being mouthing off to people who aren't going to say, this man might be in need of involuntary commitment to a mental institution. They're going to say instead, he's a great leader. Why, he's the president of the Palmetto Family Council, a social conservative public policy group, as opposed to he's a lone crank who's been ripping off morons for a long time and probably ought to be examined, possibly locked up, if not for his mental state, then for his fraud against the thousands of people he bilked. But instead, there's a Christian Broadcasting Network that's willing to say, no, he's a executive at a something council, which is a la policy group. It's not. It's a nut. It's a street corner lunatic. It's a screamer. The end is near. Oh, really? Are you a nut? No, I'm president of the End is Near Council, a socially conservative public policy group. Oh, okay. I'll just write that down. You all have an awfully scraggly beard. Well, I'm a hipster. Oh, well, that explains it. Now, years ago, you couldn't get away with that. That's true, but now you can. But, I have that going on in my own backyard. Eugene Del Gaudio is a street corner lunatic. Very literally a street corner lunatic. He spends, a not insignificant portion of his time standing outside of, in the old days, of the White House with a donkey in a bridal gown and veil, saying, well, if gay marriage, then what? Then I'm going to marry this donkey, I guess was what we were supposed to come to the conclusion. And I would say that sounds like a very deeply personal issue. Now, mind you, I might commit you to a mental institution for actually marrying the donkey. But just talking about it, we're fairly tolerant of. I'm not going to commit you to a mental institution necessarily, but if I catch you with the donkey later, we could just do straight jail for that one. Our mental institutions are overburdened as it is, and what we need is a system of privatized mental institutions that you can never escape from. That'll end up being the ALEC answer, and then I'll be sorry I opened my mouth. Anyway, Smith's comments appeared in a March 2011 CBN story. And again, I got to distract myself again. That's another branch of another super story that needs to be discussed at one point. What is the Christian Broadcasting Network? Why does it exist? Certainly there are Christians who enjoy broadcast news and broadcast whatever, entertainment. So sure, why, with all the filth on television today, I don't even know which network to turn to. Here's one. The Christian Broadcasting Network. Whatever's on it must be A-OK for Christians. I'll watch it rather than risk it with the far dicier American Broadcasting Company or perhaps the Columbia Broadcasting System. All of these things, who knows what America or Columbia might mean? I don't even know, but Christian, I'll get my news from that. So there you go. But really, of course, somebody else has funded the thing with what other idea in mind? The idea that if we rely on the National Broadcasting Company, the American Broadcasting Company, the Columbia Broadcasting System, or the cable channels, CNN, whatever, to find this obscure lunatic, Orrin Smith, and the Palmetto Family Council, even if they find him and quote him, there's some danger that they may say, well, I found him on a street corner. He was kind of scraggly and loony. So he might just be a nut. Maybe I'm not going to run the story. I can't run a story without sources. And this guy doesn't count as a source. He's a loon. So the Christian Broadcasting Network exists for one reason. And, is part of a larger program. They say, Orrin, shave the scraggly beard, put on this suit. I can't put on a suit. I can't afford a suit. Well, we'll rig it up so you can afford a suit. We'll help you do some fundraising. You send out these letters. Idiots send you money, and then you use that money to buy suits. Keep yourself shaved, and then you're not crazy Orrin on the street corner. You're Orrin Smith, president of the Palmetto Family Council, a social conservative public policy group. But who's going to listen to me? The National Broadcasting Company wants nothing to do with me. They know I used to be a scraggly street corner lunatic. In fact, you at the Christian Broadcasting Network know I used to be a scraggly street corner lunatic. Yes, but we're willing to ignore it. Well, then in that case, I will shave. I will use this money you hooked me up with to put on a suit. I will tell you these crazy things. And in exchange, the Christian Broadcasting Network will dress some street corner lunatics up as anchors, put them in a studio, which is built in a warehouse somewhere, like all studios do. It's cheap stuff. And we'll put up a little screen behind you, and you say what you're going to say. We'll roll the videotape. It's all, in the end, will all look just like a network news broadcast. That is the purpose of the Christian Broadcasting Network, to turn street corner lunatics into presidents of Palmetto Family Councils, which are, of course, social conservative public policy groups, which is, of course, how they get their 501c3, 501c4 designation, which, of course, is what makes the donations that they collect from the Melanie Austins of the world legal to literally launder into the clothes that they wear to make themselves look like presidents of Palmetto Family Councils rather than street corner lunatics. I apologize to street corner lunatics. It's an admirable profession, but, they've disrupted your model and the game has changed. What can I tell you? Smith's comments, back to Rebecca Berg in Real Clear Politics, appeared in a March 2011 CBN story alongside feedback from other key national evangelical leaders such as Ralph Reed and Tony Perkins, who are barely one step above the street corner lunatic level themselves, but their transformation has been longer in the making, or longer standing than Orrin Smith's. And he may never have been on any street corner. Maybe he was always clean shaven. But why does it appear alongside those other key national evangelical leaders' statements? To validate it, so that he's the farm team. Orrin Smith one day, when Ralph Reed, Tony Perkins pass on, die, as we like to say in non-sectarian America, then Orrin Smith can step up. So this is how they validate him. Shortly after the story ran, Trump called Smith and invited him to meet at Trump Tower in New York. Smith told Real Clear Politics, quote, to see if he could convince me those things weren't true. It probably had something to do with, I was in an early primary state, Smith said. Gee whiz, how did he figure that out? It probably did have something to do with that, which is why you went to the Christian Broadcasting Network to say this thing, so that he would invite you in and you could try and play the kingmaker role in South Carolina. So yeah, it had something to do with you're in an early primary state. Trump was laying the foundation for a campaign, Smith thought at the time. Remember, it's 2011. Although it was difficult trying to tell if he was serious about running for president or not, during their meeting in Trump's office, they discussed Christian faith and religious liberty. Smith was struck by, quote, a different Donald Trump than I expected. On his way out the door, Smith asked that Trump consider donating to the Palmetto Family Council. He was never heavy-handed about any quid pro quo, Smith said. I thought that was an interesting comment because you're the one asking for the donation. Usually you would be proposing the quid pro quo, like if you donate to the Palmetto Family Council, a social conservative public policy group, 501c3, 501c4, says the mouse type underneath there, asterisk, right? If you do, well, you might find a considerably more accommodating political landscape in South Carolina, should you make your way around to us as a early primary state. He was never heavy-handed about any quid pro quo, but we don't know how heavy-handed Smith might have been. Trump delivered, though. It was a quiet donation, he says, that came with a simple cover letter, Smith said. It read, great meeting with you and your wife in my office. Note that Orrin does not mention at any point that he brought his wife with him to this, but I guess he did, or else Trump imagined it. That was a letter dated May 6, 2011. Enclosed was a check for $10,000, by the way, from the Donald J. Trump Foundation. And the story at this point becomes, oh my gosh, the Donald J. Trump Foundation. I maintain that the story is as much, oh my God, there's a tax-exempt Palmetto Family Council. But it's not to be, at least not yet. That's why you're here listening to it on the radio. I could be writing it up, but I'm talking it out instead. You write it. That check is one of at least several donations Trump used his private foundation, to suggest that Trump used his private foundation, funded by outside donors, to launch and fuel his political ambitions. Such contributions, if they were made solely for Trump's benefit, could violate federal self-dealing laws for private foundations. Stop here, though, to note this. If he were, in fact, instead using a private organization funded by outside donors to launch and fuel his political ambitions, that would be a PAC, and it would be solely for Trump's benefit, presumably, because he's the one that would be running. But it wouldn't violate anything at all. So how interesting is that? It suggests a number of things. One, there might be something wrong with our PAC system and the way it interplays with the supposed nonprofit sphere. And two, that he's extraordinarily lazy and low energy. All he really needed to do at this point was form a PAC. But I guess if he had formed a PAC, that would be like tipping his hand about his political ambitions. And so he thought instead he might be able to get away with this one. And so he might, because ultimately, if the Palmetto Family Council, if we're going to continue to play along with the charade that it's a legitimate tax-exempt charitable organization, then there's nothing wrong with the Donald Trump Foundation giving money to it. The only problem is, in this formulation, in the Real Clear Politics formulation, is that it's implied that Trump is interested in the support of the Palmetto Family Council for a future presidential race, and so he uses the charity's money to give to this other supposed charity, hoping that they'll support him politically, so that would be a charitable donation inuring to the benefit of Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump were to use other people's money that wasn't tax exempt and sat in a PAC, then yeah, it could inure to the benefit of Donald Trump himself. Insofar as the idea of having a receptive audience at the Palmetto Family Council inures to Donald J. Trump's benefit. It should be noted here, that the reason we don't get upset about it is, if it had come from a PAC, is that, that would make it for an interesting thing. Can a PAC give money to a tax-exempt charitable organization, even if it's a public policy? That's a good question. I'm not even 100% sure I know the answer to that one. It must have come up before. But anyway, all of the activity of a PAC, in one sense, inures to the benefit of the candidate, right? It's supposed to, and you say, well, what's wrong with that? And we usually let it go at that. But the underlying explanation is, well, a PAC it's not about, it doesn't spend its money in order to merely accrue personal and political power to the candidate it supports. The thinking is, well, we support the candidacy of this person. Yes. Toward what end? The enactment of public policy with which we agree and which we support. And that has to be a protected First Amendment right. We can't crack down on this too much. And that's sort of the fiction that we construct. And it's only a fiction really in the modern age of career politicians, right? Back in the day of, as compared to the ideal of, Cincinnatus here, people who rotate in and out of public service out of some, sense of obligation and duty to the body politic. I will serve for some time and then perhaps go back to my private life and then perhaps be called to service again. It's not about making me into a career power broker. It's about, offering myself up as a vessel for the formulation of positive public policy. That's the charade that the Palmetto Family Council, it's the very same one that they're engaging in. Why are they a social conservative public policy group rather than just one lunatic paying himself to scream to newspapers? Because I say these things in furtherance of an agenda which takes on the guise of legislative activity. Never mind that you're legislating in areas that even social conservatives traditionally, back in the day, back when Ronald Reagan was harping about socialized medicine and the use of psychiatry against dissidents of all stripes, but in particular his stripe, that was a conservative belief that you can't legislate morality, that it would be ridiculous for you to even try. But of course, now there's a whole battery of social conservative public policy groups that do nothing but, I say it, and a politician is willing to say that they agree with it in public and then translate my rantings into language that, if adopted, would look almost exactly like legislation and be enforced almost exactly like statute, with the hand, the heavy hand of the government behind it and the police state to enforce it. But all it is the rantings of a lunatic translated into statutory language and codified. But as we said at the outset of this piece, judges trained to be hands-off about that stuff because, after all, the other side could do just the same and probably will at some point, and we hope it all comes out in the wash. Long term. Anyway, again, back to the story. It seems like it's a problem because the Donald J. Trump Foundation is giving the money instead of Donald Trump for President PAC. But remember, importantly, it couldn't be a Donald Trump for President Super PAC because he's not supposed to be coordinating one of those. So it couldn't give the $10,000. Although I don't know. I guess if it might even be illegal for a PAC to make donations to a nonprofit, or rather, probably illegal for the nonprofit to accept the donations from a PAC. But I don't know how those two worlds interact. But we may have stumbled on a different story here. Back to Real Clear Politics. From 2011 to 2014, Trump harnessed his eponymous, right? Foundation. I know the word. Just never say it out loud. To send at least $286,000 to influential conservative or policy groups, a Real Clear Politics review of the foundation's tax filings found. It's almost the same amount of money that he spent out of the foundation to settle lawsuits for his business and personal suits as well. Anyway, so Real Clear Politics now finds $286,000 to conservative or what did it say? Influential conservative or policy groups. It's a weird formulation, but okay. Really, influential conservative policy groups, period. Although maybe there's non-policy ones out there. In many cases, this flow of money corresponded to prime speaking slots or endorsements that aided Trump as he sought to recast himself as a plausible Republican candidate for president. Although sources familiar with the thinking behind the donations cautioned that Trump did not explicitly ask for favors in return for the money, they said the contributions were part of a deliberate effort by Trump to ingratiate himself with influential conservatives and brighten his political prospects. He was politically active starting in 2011, said one source with ties to Trump, and at that point, he, quote, started to make strategic donations. The lion's share of those donations came from Trump's personal funds, well, at least he got that right, and went straight to political campaigns or parties. That's why the weird formulation of conservative or policy groups. But others, the others being the policy groups, in particular those directed to the nonprofit arms of conservative policy groups, originated with Trump's foundation. If he could do a 501c3 to 501c3, he did it that way, said the source, using the tax code designation for nonprofit organizations. But Trump has not donated to the foundation that bears his name since 2008, CNN reported last month. That was really, well, Washington Post. But okay, they cite CNN, which means other donors bore the cost of his giving, which wasn't his giving. The donations to groups that granted Trump plum speaking slots or otherwise promoted his political aspirations also might run afoul of the self-dealing rules for private foundations, which prohibit a foundation's leadership from using donor money for its own gain. Yes, and like I said, the humor of it is, of course, where we say Trump hasn't donated to this foundation that bears his name since 2008, which means other donors bore the cost of his giving. Yeah, and if it was a PAC, we would be like, yeah, of course other donors bore the cost of his giving. That's what PACs are. But you got to you got to be designated for what you are. That's why he's in trouble with the New York Attorney General right now. Anyway, getting the right to speak or access to networking events, that's definitely starting to push into self-dealing when you're using the private foundation assets to benefit Mr. Trump, said Rosemary Fye. We've seen her name before and never knew how to pronounce it. F-E-I, remember her? Partner at the Adler and Colville law firm in San Francisco, where she specializes in charity law. Multiple Trump campaign aides did not respond to requests for comment. How do they do it? This potential conflict echoes other improper donations and practices by the Donald J. Trump Foundation that have recently come to light during his campaign for president. You know what they are. You know what they're from. But what examples do they give? The Washington Post's discovery of the Pam Bondi donation. That's definitely one. Also, Melania spending thousands of Trump Foundation dollars at charity auctions for items they've personally kept, including 2 portraits of Trump and a football helmet signed by Tim Tebow. Most recently, the Post found that Trump's foundation solicited donations in New York without proper certification from the state, right? Attorney General Eric Schneiderman ordered on Monday that Trump's foundation immediately stop soliciting donations. And they note, because it's Real Clear Politics on both sides. Schneiderman's a Democrat, endorsed Hillary Clinton, has opened a broader investigation into the foundation, a probe that Trump and his campaign have cast as political in nature. But RCP's, Real Clear Politics, review of IRS filings by the Trump Foundation turned up a fresh conflict, a 2013 donation of $10,000 to The Family Leader. That's the name of the group. A 501c4, by the way. What are those? Those are the ones that claim to be educational foundations. And they can, what's the difference, by the way, between a 501c3 and a 501c4? Oh, it's right here in this paragraph, as it turns out. So I'll just read it this way rather than explain it. The family leader, that's the name of the group. A 501c4 established to, quote, develop, advocate, and support legislative agenda at the state level. That is just syntactically incorrect, but I think you get what they mean. Unlike a 501c3 or a nonprofit organization, a 501c4 is also, I think, nonprofit. Anyway, a 501c4 can affect policy and engage in limited political activity, and thus is subject to greater restrictions on contributions from charities. Okay, well, that tends to answer a part, at least, of my earlier question. 501c3 is your basic charitable nonprofit organization. 501, and they're supposed to be strictly limited in the amount of money they can spend on politics and lobbying. One of the favorite tricks since way back when I was on the Hill, and I knew all about this, and the first time I became aware of self-dealing laws was when Newt Gingrich was using his interlocking nonprofits and 501c3s, 501c4s to fund his political activity, for which he was largely drummed out of the speakership. But hey, who cares about that? But I learned that 501c3s are not supposed to be lobbying, not supposed to spend that tax-exempt money on for political purposes. So what you would do is, if you were the if you're the Palmetto Family Council or whatever, and you're 501c3, if you were actually doing things that like helped families in any way, you could be a 501c3. But if you wanted to be doing lobbying, you'd be a 501c4 and say, we're not lobbying per se, but it's we're producing educational materials. Our target for this education is the state legislature, and they're the only ones that get our stuff, but it's educational. We're telling them you should learn about how to pass the socially conservative political agenda we want. And if you don't do it, then, well, you haven't been educated very well, and we'll have to try again. And then, when I worked on the Hill, we used to see things all the time that were basically policy position papers, white papers, on what policy ought to be and what sorts of things the Congress ought to enact. And then at the bottom, it would say paid for by Heritage Foundation, something, blah, blah, 501c4 Educational Committee. And it was lobbying, but it was allowed under 501c4. But everyone was always pushing the envelope, knowing that the IRS, every time the IRS would try to crack down on this stuff, they'd scream, oh, we're being politically persecuted, which, again, you saw when they realized, oh, my God, all these Tea Party things are just garbage grifting operations, largely by deplorable people. We should crack down on this stuff. It's just nonsense. Boo-hoo, you're persecuting us. Well, are we? You're really violating the spirit of the law here. Well, what about liberals? They do it too. Do they? To some extent, I'm sure we can find some somewhere, but nothing wholesale like anything with, I don't know, socialism, just to throw something out that you would believe happens. In the name of the group is doing this. Whereas every Tea Party organization, like, what else do these things do? The Tea Party isn't the thing. All you guys do is stand on street corners and say honk to impeach Obama. That's not something that needs a non-profit structure behind it. I have my doubts about all these things. They chiefly seem to be about getting the heads of those organizations speaking slots at rallies and getting quoted in the newspaper. That's what they're all about. That's not a legitimate political activity. Or is it? But by the way, can we also overlay the emerging body of evidence that they're in fact run by people who are either have been involuntarily committed to mental institutions or should be? I mean, does anybody think that what happened to Melanie Austin shouldn't have happened at some earlier stage, perhaps, to Katrina Pearson? She's bonkers. She's just a garbage advocate. As you've seen her on television, she gets on and says the most ridiculous backwards-ass, completely wrong, nutso things. The kind of things that if she was saying them on a street corner without a camera on her would get her involuntarily committed to a mental institution. But because she's doing it with a bullet necklace on and a makeup job, ta-da, political activist. That's what the 501c4 designation, 501c3 designation says. She's the president of dumbass idiots organization, and there's nothing we can do about it. So back to the story. After a little ranting, if the Trump Foundation sent its money to the family leader, that's what they call it, and not its affiliated nonprofit, it did not properly note it in the filing and might have failed to earmark the money for charitable purposes, a violation of IRS rules, and one for which I am not necessarily certain you can fault them. I mean, they're a fairly unsophisticated bunch running the Trump Foundation, as it turns out. They make mistakes all the time, but I bet everybody makes those mistakes, and it's meant to be confusing. Well, did you send that to the family leader or the family leader educational fund? And believe me, it happens. That sort of confusion can happen anywhere too. Did you send this to the union or the union's political education committee? It's different from a PAC. It's called a PAC. It's not really. It's the same thing, but these organizations, these entities have 8-10 different sub-entities, all with slightly different names and slightly different designations, and they can accept this kind of money, but not that kind of money. It's tough. It's hard to do. You actually do have to be somewhat smart and have a real understanding and a real grasp of tax law and affiliated fields to get it right. It's just that the Trump Foundation doesn't care and not going to pay anybody to figure this stuff out because probably they'll never be caught. Unless I run for president, in which case, I'm going to be examined under a microscope, but who cares? So if the Trump Foundation sent its money to the family leader and not the affiliated nonprofit, the educational committee, it did not properly note it in the filing. We already know from the Bondi episodes how often they made mistakes about getting things right in the filings. If the money was sent to the Family Leader Foundation, which would have been okay, it seems, it was not recorded as such. There's a mistake somewhere, said our professor, right? Faye, was you a professor or a partner in a law firm? That's right. It might be a really substantive mistake, or it could just be a reporting error or sloppiness. But improper reporting is still a violation of tax law. That's something the IRS would look at. And everybody would cry, fire the IRS commissioner, impeach him because he's unfairly targeting. Look, this is the job of the IRS to find out whether this stuff is being done right or not. It's just crazy. You know how big our tax code is? It's anybody could make a mistake. Yeah, anybody could. Anybody could run for president. And if you do, we'll check you out. Why is that hard to understand? In the same year that Trump's foundation made that $10,000 contribution, the family leader featured Trump as a marquee speaker for the first time at its influential leadership summit in Iowa. Is it an influential leadership summit? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe Dave Weil goes and covers it and all the rest of our Twitter journalist friends go, I don't know. Maybe it's a bigger deal than I know, but it's also the sort of thing you can just, establish. We're going to have a leadership summit in Iowa. Well, who the hell are you? I'm the family leader. Well, who the hell's that? I never heard of it. Well, I got $3 million in organizing cash that says you're going to hear from us. The cottage industry of primary activity every 4 years in Iowa is just sitting there waiting. And the activists haven't been working for 3 years. If you show up with $3 million and say, damn it, I'm having an event and we're going to make this, whatever the hell this thing is, the family leader, influential. How? You can't just buy influence. Of course I can. Watch this. $3 million distributed to a bunch of currently idle, out of work, seasonal workers. The conservative activists who every 4 years cash in on this stuff and then live off the proceeds. In the meantime, just say, money talks. Guess what? We're having this forum. It's an influential leadership summit. We're having it. And once you say you're having it, and one loon candidate says he'll be there, the other loon candidates want to go and compete. Now we got 6 of them. Now we're a major force. That's how it works. The announcement raised eyebrows. That is to invite Trump as the marquee speaker. Interesting. So whether the $10,000 went to the family leader or the Family Leader Foundation, we don't know. But the family leader decided Trump's going to be at our thing. The announcement raised eyebrows. Craig Robinson, editor of the Iowa Republican blog, wrote that Trump was, quote, an odd fit for a social conservative confab, while the family leader was roundly criticized by other Iowa conservatives for including Trump in the program. They, of course, would change their tune later. If Trump sent them money, they would be including him in the program too. What it wasn't so much an accurate critique of it being an odd fit, though that is accurate. He's not a social conservative. But really that was a plaintive cry from the rest of the Iowa Republican seasonal workers that didn't get a taste. We want one too. Bob Vanderplatz, the group's president and CEO, the family leader, nevertheless heaped praise on Trump, telling Real Clear Politics at the time that Trump, quote, sure would be, unquote, a serious presidential candidate in 2016 if he were to run. I think the best predictor of the future is to look at the past. And he's been a pretty successful guy, so I wouldn't count him out. Easy enough to say in 2013. That's what Vanderplatz said. The following year, in 2014, Trump's foundation donated another $10,000 to the family leader, but this time to its nonprofit arm, in accordance with tax law. A spokesman for the family leader did not respond to a request for comment. How does that spokesman do it? Meanwhile, there are a half a dozen other examples of Trump having used his foundation to help curry or cement favor, the IRS 990 forums show. The Reverend Franklin Graham, president and CEO of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. That's interesting, too. For example, might have seemed an unusual political ally for the brash mogul from New York, but in April 2011, Graham began to publicly express support for the celebrity businessman as Trump weighed a bid for president. Why, I wonder? When I first saw that he was getting in, I thought, well, this has got to be a joke. Graham told ABC News at the time. The American Broadcasting Company was actually interested in that because his dad was famous. See, he doesn't have to work from the street corner. But the more you listen to him, the more you say to yourself, maybe the guy's right. Sometime in 2012, Trump used his foundation to send $100,000 to Graham's association, one of the largest donations the foundation would make to any group that year. But Trump's most impactful donations might have been those to conservative groups that could offer him a platform from which to test his presidential message and garner media attention for it. In 2013, Trump took the stage at CPAC, outside Washington, D.C., where he touted his business record, railed against President Obama's policies, and declared, we have to make America great again. Now, you might think that the fact that he was going to rail against President Obama was enough to get him invited to CPAC. I'm kind of sort of thinking of running for president. I'd like to bash the current president and say a lot of things that will make your people cheer. Ordinarily, you would think, like schlubs like you and me, we think, oh, well, of course CPAC invited him. He's red meat for the troops. But there's something else going on in the background. CPAC is an expensive event to put on, right? Because we'll just note for the record that same year, Trump used his foundation to donate $50,000 to the American Conservative Union Foundation. That would be the nonprofit arm of the group that organizes CPAC and sets its program. He did not ask for a speaking slot in return, wink, wink, but he did not need to. Everyone's too smart to say, donate and we'll let you speak, said one source familiar with the donation. It's kind of understood. Trump was also listed as a CPAC sponsor in 2015, and in the immediate lead up to his presidential campaign, ACU, American Conservative Union, right? The American Conservative Union Foundation is the one that runs CPAC, but the American Conservative Union, totally different, is chaired by Matt Schlapp. Do you remember that name? Where did we hear that one the other day? Schlapp, right? The slap in the face guy? Where did we, I know we talked about him. Where's my pocket? I'll search the archive. What exactly did we have him in the news for the other day? Let's see if did I archive that story? No, let's see. I'll look, see if it's still on the list. Maybe it never was. Maybe but don't you feel like we had that? Still nothing, huh? I'm not convinced that the search is particularly helpful in Pocket. Did it search or did it not search? It just give me a bunch of things. Let's see. Where would he have last been seen? No, that ain't it either. All right. Well, at any rate, I know we had him come up on our radar. Maybe somebody out there in listening land remembers. But I know I got a comment on having mentioned him the other day. Anyway, what did Matt Schlapp do back in 2015? Okay, ACU, American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp, did not respond, in this case, to an email from Real Clear Politics asking whether Trump's foundation footed the bill or he did. In other words, Trump's listed as a CPAC sponsor in 2015. Was it because Donald J. Trump gave money or because Donald J. Trump Foundation gave money? Another one of the same question that Farenthold asks about everything. Schlapp has no answer. But Trump's greatest early political exposure might have come from Citizens United, a conservative political group, you all know the name, whose president, David Bossie, whose name you might not necessarily know, his greatest political exposure may have come when he met with David Bossie in 2011 about a potential presidential bid and remained a close ally. More recently, Bossie took a leave from his group, Citizens United, last month to join Trump's campaign as deputy campaign manager. Yeah, that's the way these things work. Another seasonal worker acquired. In April 2014, when Citizens United hosted a cattle call of would-be Republican candidates for president in New Hampshire, Trump was there. In January 2015 at Citizens United's Freedom Summit in Iowa, New Hampshire. We have summits in the weirdest places. Trump was again on the program. And at the group's South Carolina summit in May 2015, Trump also took the stage. We all just thought it was because, well, he says he's a candidate for president, and they invited all of them. Yeah. But you can also close the doors on this guy. How did Trump do this? How did he make himself legitimate? How did we allow him to do that? How come we cover him all the time? Buying tickets. That's how. The high-profile events were held in 3 key battleground states, and it was no fluke. Bossie had insisted Trump be included in one of the group's events, quote, because he was a good friend to Citizens United, unquote, said a source with knowledge of the discussions. You didn't realize this, did you? I probably didn't. I certainly never said so explicitly. But now when you read a story like this, you say, as I do, I think, of course, I should have realized that behind the scenes and all this, why are there 16 candidates? Why not 5,000? People who say they're running for the Republican nomination. How come these 16? We're always obsessing over, well, how do they, like when it comes to debate time, and they tell us, well, the debates are sort of a different animal, and the fact that they're on television and they're controlled by, I guess, the television producers, they have to come up with something. Well, if you're not polling XYZ by this point, or you haven't done this or that amount of campaigning, I guess they had come up with their own arbitrary thing, like the arbitrary inclusion of polls in Real Clear Politics. I know Armando must be going nuts, and I'm reading RCP for this long without mentioning that. But what about these things that are not controlled by the networks, that are instead controlled by conservative organizations? Why wouldn't Gary Johnson be included? Why wouldn't, I don't know. We don't know the names because they exclude these people. Why do they exclude them? Is it because they're not polling very high? Well, Rick Santorum's polling 0%. Why is he there? Huckabee's polling 0%. Why is he there? Carly Fiorina's polling 0%. Why is she there? And wouldn't you know it, the answer turns out to be, well, it's not what you're polling so much. It's, are you sending any cash? Well, gee whiz, they're making donations. Now, it doesn't say anywhere on the program, well, Donald Trump is on the stage in this debate because he gave us $50,000. But that's because, well, one, he probably didn't give you $50,000. The foundation did. And two, neither did Carly Fiorina. It was Carly Fiorina's also screwed up accounting super PAC that probably paid that. And then it should be noted that it's all going to the ARM. That's 501c3 or 501c4 over there. So although this is associated with Citizens United, all the money was really going to the Citizens United Educational Foundation, which we don't really have to tell you about, and so we don't put it on the program. But if we do, in the interest of full disclosure, we won't tell you where the money actually came from. We'll just say it was partly sponsored by Carly Fiorina for president and Donald Trump for president. And that stuff doesn't make the papers for some reason. It's all just understood. But just as we learned, for instance, about the Iowa straw poll and the way it can be manipulated by, when we learned that the Pauls, both Ron Paul and Rand Paul, tried to manipulate the outcome of the straw polls by bringing in enough of their supporters and busing them and buying them tickets. And everybody thought, oh my God, what a fraud. But the whole thing is fraud from top to bottom. Instead of just paying the admission price of a $50,000 donation to the foundation behind the scenes, they tried to spend $25,000 to bring people in by bus and win that way. It's cheaper. It's a good play. That makes him smart. But instead, we instead classified him as a lunatic and came this close to involuntarily committing him to a mental institution. But we let it slide because the guy made it to the, House of Representatives. So he must not be totally nuts. You see the interplay of all this? It's very interesting. Almost at the end of the article, we're probably not even going to be able to cram the rest of it in because of all of my asides on all this stuff. But I don't know. I found it a very interesting foundation from which to start. Anyway, just I'll cram this part in. It might have helped that in 2014, Trump's foundation donated $100,000 to the Citizens United Foundation. Wink, wink. By far its single largest donation to any group that year. RCP reached Bossy by phone on Monday and offered him an opportunity to respond. Bossy said he'd call back, but he didn't, and subsequently could not be reached for comment. How does he do it? Trump has maintained that his speaking invitations prior to his candidacy for president were a reflection of his popularity. At an event at the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. in December 2014, Trump thanked the club's president, David Rubenstein, for inviting him to attend. That name sounds familiar too. David called and he said, "Would you do this?" Trump said, "When David calls, I say yes." Trump was planning to travel to Iowa in a few weeks for the Citizens United summit there, and Rubenstein kicked off the discussion by asking whether that might mean Trump was weighing a bid for president. Trump looked into the crowd. It's a great group. So many friends. One of them is David Bossy, who right now is heading up that whole dinner and that whole weekend in Iowa. He said, "Would you do it?" And I have great respect for David and what he's done and what he represents. So I agreed to do it, and it's going to be a great event. So I agreed to do it. I paid for it. I paid for this microphone. He's actually less transparent than Mitt Romney in all this. There's a little bit left to the article, but it is time, as so often is the case. Happens every day, as a matter of fact, where we turn on the music and instead turn our attention to what's coming up on the after show next, right here on Netroots Radio. By the way, if you're looking to get a hold of the after show podcast, if you are perhaps listening to our podcast and not to the Netroots Radio live stream, which you can pick up on the front page at Daily Kos each day, visit netrootsradio.com for an entire lineup of who's on when and how to get their podcasts, so that you can join in on all the fun that I tell you about each day at the end of the show. Like so. Are you ready? What's up next on Red Sky at Morning Tuesday on the After Show? Clark County, Washington must pay $250,000 for violating homeless people's civil rights by contributing roughly $12 billion every year. Undocumented immigrants could teach Trump a lesson or two about paying taxes. And 3 British-born scientists win the 2016 Nobel Prize for Physics for their studies on exotic phases of matter. Always interesting. And on the last half, a visit with Chris Reeves. You may know him as Tom Servo 433 for news about the failing Kansas experiment, which failed even more bigly over the weekend, and a discussion on media coverage of the results of Missouri's statewide Measures of Academic Progress test versus Missouri school districts taking extra security measures against scary evil clowns. What's more important? We'll find out next.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you for listening. A bit of a rant today. I think we kind of expanded the RCP story into some interesting new directions. It's like a vast conspiracy out there, man. It's really difficult to get it all down on paper. Thanks for listening to me talking out. Stay tuned next for all of the aforementioned stories on the After Show with Wink and Justice coming up next.